Good morning, my name is Benedetto. I'm the founder of Glasgow-based design and branding agency, The Loft, and this is Loftcast. As part of our response to the current crisis, we're getting together some of the country's top business minds and hearing how they are best preparing for this uncertain future. This includes people that have scaled multi-million pound companies, people that have performed international turnarounds, people that have lived through recessions and solved lots and lots of various problems of all different sizes. And although they might not have all the answers, because this is quite a different crisis to previous ones, I think they're probably in a good place to provide a little bit of clarity. Today I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Bob Keiller. Bob is passionate about leadership, cultures, value and communication. He believes that sometimes these called soft skills are actually the hard ones and those that make the biggest difference. After 30 years in the energy industry in a number of roles, Bob now works 4 days a week, unpaid, in a number of roles, helping charities, social enterprises, and businesses grow. He is an experienced business leader and entrepreneurial with broad international experience. And I also may add, he's one of the Hall of Fame members from Entrepreneur Scotland, which I remember you not winning, but being inducted into in 2014, where you gave a fantastic speech. Bob, thank you so much for joining us today. Can I ask, basically, what have you been up to since this all kicked off?
Yeah, it's been busy. I mean, I've been speaking to lots and lots of different people, trying to help, trying to provide advice, carrying on with coaching and mentoring, which can be done mostly quite easily through the kind of this online format and forum. Some of the work I've been doing with executive teams, I've had to kind of change a little bit, because whilst I can do one-to-one work, group sessions, when you're actually looking at the dynamics of a group and how people interact, not that suited to a forum like this. Conversely, training sessions, we do a lot of training work, and what we've had to do is effectively chop the training that we've done up into slices, redesign it, rewrite it, repackage it, and then deliver it in small chunks, because you can't do a one-day training course where somebody's sitting at the end looking at a screen. So you've got to break it up into modules. So typically we're breaking it into 2-hour modules and doing it there. So it's taken a bit of work, but ultimately it's doable, and it's got some benefits in the sense that it allows us to do more than we would do in a busy classroom when we've got limited time and lunch is approaching, and you're trying to get too much material into too short a time scale as well. So we're kind of adapting to what's in front of us.
Yeah. Excellent. What is with the companies you've helped? You mentioned charities and social enterprises. What have been the sort of big actions or the big steps that you've taken so far with them?
I mean, for me, first of all, you're quite right to point up front that wisdom comes from experience. None of us have experienced this particular set of circumstances before, so none of us should be treated as having any relevant wisdom. You're right that some of us have faced difficult challenges before, but it's the context here that's different. But no one expects us to be able to predict with any certainty what's going to be like in 6 weeks' time or 6 months' time. So we need to keep that in mind all the time. And obviously there's some sectors that have been involved that have been impacted hugely compared with others. I mean, tourism, restaurants and bars, theatres, concert venues, retail and others. And how quickly and to what extent they will be able to recover is really, really difficult to predict. So when I'm speaking to organisations and companies, my advice to them is generally quite simple. First and foremost, your obligation is to survive. Because you can do whatever you like, but if you can't survive, none of that matters. So don't put off the difficult decisions. Look at simple things like credit management, cash flow, and customers, and do what you need to do to survive. And then once you've survived, it's a good opportunity to reset and go back to the basics and reaffirm your why and your how in your business. You can always change the what you do, but understanding the why and the how of the business is really, really important. And often people don't take time to do that, because it's like as though we're flying a plane. During this crisis, some of the planes have had an opportunity to touch down and land, so it's a good time to walk around the plane and have a look at it, make sure it's still airworthy, get a new flight plan, and a full tank of fuel, and off you go. So it gives you a rare opportunity to do that again. And a lot of people get insights when they come back to say, why are we doing this? Who are we trying to help? Therefore, what are our options? And the third thing really is about innovate. There's no point in thinking that we'll just cross our fingers and hope that everything will get back to normal, because it might, but also it might not. And if it doesn't, by the time it gets there, you won't be able to do anything with it. So for me, it's getting people into this mode of thinking that what skills have you got, what talents have you got, what resources have you got, what knowledge and experience have you got, and therefore what can you do rather than what can't you do. And if you take that view and that approach, sometimes it opens up new opportunities. And then get into the process of saying, well, we need to test things out, we need to try new things. But there's no point in trying to change everything at once, because if it doesn't work, then you're in a worse state than where you started. So having a way, a process, if you will, of being able to innovate quickly and to learn fast and to fail quickly, so that you can actually work out what really works as opposed to what you think might work on paper. That innovative model and is something that a lot of companies haven't had to do in the past, and therefore they need to change the way of thinking. And really, for me, it's the leadership in the business needs to take that on board to say, well, actually, you know what, we're going to innovate here. And as a leader of the business, you won't have all the answers. But the best place to find a lot of the options is to speak to your team and to listen to your team and to make sure that they feel listened to, and then to take on board and use that as the primary source of innovation.
I was going to say, you've mentioned going back to values, which is obviously a topic that you've spoken a lot about in the past, and almost repurposing the business based on those values, almost getting back to what's the why behind the business as opposed to the what. Has anybody done that? Have you seen anybody doing that so far that's particularly impressed you, or have you seen any experiences of that?
Well, I mean, when you look at things that a couple of charities I work with in that, the danger of some of the third sector is they try to help everyone. And they start off with a pretty clear mission and a pretty clear focus. But as time goes by and they find more people that need their help, if they can help, they will help. And as a result, the kind of what they do becomes a little bit kind of diluted and a little bit more difficult to understand. At times like this is a time to say, well, actually, you can't help everyone all the time, especially when your income stream has all but dried up, and that you're living off the potential for some public sector support, which is indeterminate in its timescale and extent. You have to then go back and say, remember what we're all about. Remember what we're doing this for. Remember who we're here to help primarily. And let's concentrate on getting that core cause covered and go back to that and concentrate on what can we do to help that core cause. And it means stopping doing things. And it also means kind of starting new things. And that can be difficult, but it's much easier to do when you say to people, look, we need to look at the compass again and check which way our true north is. Because we've not looked at the compass for a while, and as a result, we've kind of been wandering north by northeast or north by northwest for a while. So let's concentrate again on saying, where did we start this journey, and where is it we're heading, and let's get back to it. And that gives you the power to be able to say, no, we're not going to do these things, even though we might have done them in the past, because they're not core to what our direction is at the moment. We might get back to doing more things at some point in the future, but we need to find a way of letting go things. And getting back to your core purpose and values is a great way of deciding what to let go of.
Oh, fantastic. Bob, can I say slightly, I must say to the audience, Bob was at pains before this call to say he's the opposite of a guru that's got all the answers and is going to shed wisdom on us all. But he did, we personally think he's coming from a good place of experience. But can I ask a slightly personal question? I presume this is industry specific, but if you had to look at the idea of pivoting the business and changing the profits, changing what it is you do, what it is you sell, or preparing for a return to normality, and if you had to give it a percentage, what would you be doing? Would you be doing a little bit of both? You
have to do both. I mean, I think you've answered your own question in a minute, or to some extent, and if your customers are standing at your front door saying, we can't wait for you to restart our business and we want you to deliver what you delivered before in exactly the same way, what a great place to be in. And if you've got an order book that actually satisfies all your business plans and gets you back onto a full recovery, again, what a great place to be in. And there are some businesses during this crisis that have seen a huge upturn in business. So people, online retailers, for instance, are now seeing a huge increase in some of their businesses, and they're struggling to cope with the capacity. The challenge they've got is understanding, will that demand sustain when people have other options back, to be able to buy more locally, or will it die down with time, or will it increase when people become more and more comfortable with things like, online shopping and whatever. But for most businesses, the potential is that the volumes of business that they could potentially do is going to be less, it's going to be reduced. More unemployment in society for a while, less demand, downturn in certain sectors that we've already talked about. All of this is a knock-on effect. So essentially, if you don't think about, well, what else can we be doing here, then in terms of innovation, then you're almost accepting the fact that our business is likely to shrink. And my challenge to leaders is to say, does it need to be that way? Does it need to be that way? If you look at business differently, could you do things in a different way? Could you provide different services, additional value add for a different customer base and get out there? A lot of it comes back to selling and marketing. So if people are looking at what skills they need to develop going forward, they've probably got all the core skills that they need in terms of whatever service or product they provide. But getting it out there in new ways to new audiences and being able to market it and tell a compelling story is going to be the big challenge for people, because, in this day and age, we're all bombarded with information all the time. How do you get your story heard?
Interesting. Can I ask, for the people that have, this may be the first time that companies have had to do that, going back to basic values, and then having to repurpose their business accordingly based on innovation, and really becoming much, much more customer centric, because maybe the 10, 15 years of going in quite a steady direction. Is there any guides, resources, things, books that might be worthwhile to those that have never done this exercise before?
I think
anything you can think might be useful for them?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the innovation process and that, it's dead easy to read a book that tells you here's how to innovate, but actually doing it is a different matter. There's a great example that I work alongside the Lens organisation, which is a Glasgow-based organisation, primarily in the third sector, but also a bit in the public sector, and born out of actually an experience of failed innovation programmes. I've put together a program that allows organisations to methodically look at the talent within their organisation, to pull out proposals, but then to craft a small number of them into business opportunities, and then to prototype an even smaller number of them, but to do so with limited resources and limited time, in a way that creates a culture that encourages that to be a recurring thing. The danger in the past is, seeking suggestions from people can be really damaging for an organisation, because that 99% of the suggestions you're not going to take forward. So what you're saying to people is, give me your best idea and I'll put it in the bin. It's not a good way to motivate people to bring forward ideas. So you need to take things another way and say, culturally, how do we set up the environment that people will bring forward ideas, and then we'll gladly work together to support the small number of ideas that we collectively agree we're going to prototype and test. If anybody's looking for help on how to do that, then contacting the Lens team in Glasgow is a good starting point, because they can come in and kind of show you how to do that. And they're a social enterprise, so they're not in it for the money. They're not, and because they work in the third sector, they realise that a lot of people don't have a lot of spare cash to spend at the moment. So, that's a great example of, if you can't do it yourself, sometimes it's good to get somebody in to show you how to do it. Once they've shown you how to do it, you can do it yourself thereafter,
Yeah, that's super interesting. We'll make the link available on with the communications for that. That's fantastic. Can I put you a little bit on the spot here? What would you do? And just going back to this, if you were, for example, if you owned a restaurant right now, a hotel, a sports club, how would you be best preparing for that scenario? Because there really is a lot of uncertainty in what they're.
Yeah, but I mean, if you take a sports club, for instance, if you look at like I go to the local David Lloyd down by the D side here in Aberdeen, The staff that are in there, they're all bright and intelligent, enthusiastic people. I bet if you got these guys together, either online or in suitably spaced in a massive gym hall or whatever, that within the space of a few hours, you could come up with all sorts of different concepts and ideas of how to keep the revenue coming into the business without the concept of having people in a fairly tightly packed class environment where you're all doing the same exercises together and things like that. So, doing much more outside, for instance, converting the tennis facilities into, social distancing exercise spaces, and doing things in different ways, in different groups, in different formats. They would come up with all sorts of different ideas. And from that, there'd be a small number saying, well, we can test this. We can test this really quickly. We can understand what the appetite is. We can understand how we're going to market it. We've already got a customer base that has been out there, that pays money to come with us all the time. What we need is to get them coming back in and spending more money and spending time, etc. So you would quickly be able to harness some of that to the point you'd be able to say, we can make this work. Where I saw this actually from that team was a few years ago, they got completely flooded. And as a result, the whole of the downstairs place was completely flooded. So it was all out of service. So they had to innovate. So they brought in porta cabins. They put shower facilities in porta cabins. They converted the games halls into temporary gymnasia. They changed the car parking. They did all sorts of things. So when the pressure was on, the team showed that their ability to innovate was actually really, really remarkable, and they did it really, really well. And I have no doubt that they can do the same now. And I've also got the same faith that if people harness the skills of the teams and the people, if you're a restaurant manager, obviously there's options for things like home delivery and takeaway services and stuff like that. But what else? What else could you do? How could you get it so that you're actually, without necessarily having the physical footfall, that you can still maintain the revenues? I bet there's all sorts of pop-up options and things like that that people could come up with that could be done relatively quickly and cheaply if people put their mind to it to say, we're not in the business of knowing the answers, but we sure are going to go out and find out what the options are.
Fantastic. Well, that's excellent. I love everything you've said there about empowering the teams, getting everybody collaborating and coming up with ideas, and just having a go and innovating. I think it's very much in line with what we've been saying about how you can turn this negative into positive. So a huge thanks for that. Any final thoughts? Any final insights? Anything you'd like to share? We'll be sharing these videos to its entrepreneurs, its business owners, and its people in a leadership position. Anything final you'd like to?
I mean, getting your message across has always been a key aspect of business. I think going forward, the challenge more than anything is to say, we're now doing different things for different people. So in the past, if you've always been in a certain sector and people know you for that, then if you do decide, well, actually, we're going to do something different now, how do you get that message across in a way that people are likely to hear it and also to kind of listen to it and act upon it? And, in the nature of the business you're in, you kind of know the challenge around about various things that people have got around about brand and marketing and all this type of thing. And a lot of what I see at the moment is pretty ineffective marketing, and the level of engagement is difficult for people to say, yeah, that's really compelling. So people need to get better at being able to kind of communicate and tell that story, and they need to come to people like you and others who have got expertise in that area to help them to get their message clearer, and so that they can get their new message across in what could be already a busy and difficult marketplace.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to turn the record off in a little second. First, I just want to say a huge thank you for your time. And really wonderful. We got so much out of that.